Hey everyone, good evening. Thanks for tuning in live to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I'm Andy Leach, Senior Director of Museum and Archival Collections for the Rock Hall, and I'm very excited to be hosting tonight's event featuring the amazing virtuoso instrumentalist, composer, producer, and guitar god, Steve Vai. Before we get started, I want to mention just a few things we want you to know about here at the Rock Hall. First of all, our museum is open every day. Please go to rockhall.com to get more information on that and get your tickets online. Our museum is really one of the safest places you can visit. We're following all the recommended guidelines of the state of Ohio, the CDC, public health officials. So please come if you can. We have a bunch of great new exhibits that you should see. I'm sitting here in our very fun interactive exhibit called The Garage, where you can jam with your friends, learn how to play an instrument that you might not know how to play. One exhibit that we specifically want to call out tonight is Play It Loud, the Instruments of Rock and Roll. And that is our largest exhibition ever. We curated it in conjunction with the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. And it features some of the most iconic instruments in rock and roll history. It's the only time these instruments are being seen in one place together. And it closes at the end of this year. So please come and visit if you can and see this incredible exhibit, which includes a very important guitar owned by Steve Vai, which is right behind me right now. And we're going to talk about that one tonight. We also encourage you to become a member of the Rock Hall if you haven't done that already. Much of what we do is made possible through the support of our members. If you're not already a member, we would really love it if you consider doing that. And if you are a member out there, thank you for your support. If you want more information on how to join, check out rockhall.com. We also encourage you to check out our online store to get a jump on any of your holiday shopping that you need to do. We have a great selection of gifts for music lovers. You can even give the gift of a Rock Hall membership, which includes free admission, discounts, and much more. So please check that out on our website too. And finally, we want to make sure you know that you'll be able to hear tonight's interview on SiriusXM in the coming weeks. And we want to thank our great partners at SiriusXM, as always. And now, without further delay, I will introduce our special guest. Steve Vai is one of the most gifted musicians of his generation, and he's one of the best guitar players on the planet. Starting in the 80s, he worked with so many legendary artists, including Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees Frank Zappa, David Lee Roth, Whitesnake, including Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee David Coverdale, Public Image Limited, including inductee John Lydon. In addition to that, Steve has had a very distinguished solo career, and he's toured the world as a solo artist, as a member of G3 and Generation Axe, which hopefully we'll talk about tonight. He's also a renowned composer and arranger and producer. He has honorary doctorates from the Berklee College of Music, which he attended as a student, and Musicians Institute. For over 30 years, he's been consistently included in all the lists of the top guitarists of all time. And as I said earlier, he's featured in our major exhibition, Play It Loud. He's a true original, and we're so honored to have him here. Please join me in welcoming the one and only Steve Vai. Hey, Steve.
Hey, how you doing, Andy?
Great, thank you. It's great to see you.
Wow, you know, I listened to that intro and I think, wow, who am I?
You did all of that.
Who do I think I am?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
None. Well, thank you for being here with us. It's, and thank you for being part of Play It Loud, our big exhibit.
Thank you. I mean, it's such a phenomenal, it's truly a phenomenal exhibit. I mean, I can't imagine how you got all of those instruments together in one display. It's remarkable. I remember when it started in April at the Metropolitan Museum. April, that was 2019.
19, right.
Unfortunately, I did not get an opportunity to visit. I was on the go, but I was inundated with emails and photos from friends, family, fans, just absolutely blown away by the exhibit constantly through the whole period that it was there. And I understand you had like 750,000 people come through.
Exactly.
750,000. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, it's been very exciting, and it was the biggest thing we've ever pulled off, and pretty soon, sadly, it won't be around, and we have to figure out how to get all those things, all those artifacts, back to the people who own them. So,
and then you'll do something else cool and creative.
We will, and stay tuned for that. So, Steve, how have you been doing this year? What's this year been like for you?
It's been fantastic. Obviously there's the challenges that we're all confronted with, but some people have been thriving, and I think everybody everybody that I speak to seem to have found things about the situation that really added to the quality of their life. Of course, there's the challenges and stuff, but for me, it's been fine. I had to cancel. Luckily, I didn't have any tours planned, but I was planning on going to. Had a pretty big project that I was planning for a while to record 4 hours of my orchestra music with. First, with two orchestras in Europe. One was the Metropole in Holland, and the other was the Aarhus, Denmark Radio Orchestra. And it was about a month project, and it was for last June, and we had to move it, and we moved it to October and November, and then we had to cancel it, and But I will say, unfortunately, musicians, the musician sector has been hit really hard. Because we can't tour. And for so many musicians that live hand to mouth, in the touring circuits, it's been. But I will say, musicians are very resilient.
It's true.
I think their creativity. What I've seen is that the creativity of the guitar players, musicians in general, that I know, have forged very effective creative projects and even evolutionary technology during this whole period. So that's nice to see.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I know people personally who are recording things they wouldn't have otherwise done, and
right.
Performing in ways that they wouldn't have expected online and so on. Have you found that it's given you an opportunity to work on any new things that you wouldn't have done otherwise? Or
yeah. For me and a lot of people, obviously the internet has become a vital tool in reaching the fans and the people that are interested. And during the lockdown, I did use it in ways that I hadn't before, through my Instagram and through live. I did some live streamings. Actually, you can check them out. I did 2 series of live streams. One was called Alien Guitar Secrets, where I wax on and on about music, the guitar, my career. Not so much about me. I like talking to younger musicians that are looking for some advice. And then on Thursdays, I was doing a live stream that I called Under It All. And that's where I would talk more about my esoteric studies and spiritual studies, and that, did very well, actually. People seem to like it. But some of the things that I started to do that I wouldn't normally do, for instance, during one of my live streams, I played acoustic guitar and sang a song.
Oh, that's a great one. I saw that one.
Oh, great. Thank you. It's called The Moon and I.
Yep.
And I think that it was the first time I actually ever did that. I mean, of course, I've sat around and played guitar and sang in the privacy of my own home. And I would sing on tour a little bit, but I did that, and the response was really so encouraging that I decided to take a whole handful of songs that I have that are they have a particular DNA in them that's a little unlike a lot of my other pieces, and record a record that's one acoustic guitar and one voice.
Nice.
And that's what I'm working on now.
Very cool. Do you record it right there?
Yep, in the Harmony Hut, my studio.
Sure. Excellent. Yeah, that's a great video. And I will say, all of you out there should follow Steve on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. That's a great way to keep up on what he's doing. New compositions, even. There's one thing I noticed that was really awesome, and it was this the thing you did for your 60th birthday. You kind of came up with a challenge for yourself.
Yeah.
And folks can watch that on your YouTube channel. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, that was a song called Candle Power. It was a kind of a concept. I think a lot of people can relate to this when I say a lot of creative ideas, they first start in the mind, as a visual or something. And as a guitar player, my whole life, a lot of the ideas I would come up with would just kind of start as, not necessarily something I came up with playing the guitar, but imagining doing things that I can't do. That's a really powerful practice, because a lot of times we're only concerned about not being able to do something,
Yeah.
and setting limits for ourselves. But when you use your imagination and you can picture yourself doing something that you can't do, then that's the first steps in manifesting it. So I had this idea. It was just kind of a simple idea about bending notes in different directions and stuff, which is very unconventional. Kind of, it's more like a country technique, but I wanted to do it in a way that didn't sound like anything I've ever heard. I love doing that, you know. I love thinking of things and then hearing something that I've never really heard. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist someplace, but when you discover something new for yourself, it's like Christmas, you know. And so, but there were certain parameters that needed to be set up. One of them was I had to use a guitar without a whammy bar, because when you bend notes with a guitar with a whammy bar, it changes the tension of the strings and the notes go flat and your intonation is history, you know. And I also needed a lot of time, because it's not a specialty of mine, this idea. So I knew it was going to take me, at least, a lot of time to work on it. So the lockdown presented an opportunity, you know. So I started working on this song, and I wanted to challenge myself outside of my comfort zone. This is a great thing to do, because it pushes you creatively to find new things. You know, this is a technique that I think is useful in any field, you know. So I set up these parameters, and one of them was I was going to use a Strat style guitar, which is very different. Like the gem that I designed, that's like a machine. I mean, my whole being is kind of like, you know, connected to that instrument. When you give me a Strat or a Les Paul, I can get something out of it, but it's not my comfort zone. Sure. And I use a very clean tone, which is very different than what I usually do. I like heavy distortion with lots of delay, and you know, that's the thing that I may conventionally go to. Of course, I do all sorts of different things, but a totally bone clean sound into like a, you know, that's outside of my comfort zone. Right. And then I decided not to have a whammy bar, which is, you know, my whole style is based on how I use the bar. I love the whammy bar always, ever since I was a little kid, and I saw what it did. I said, okay, I know, you know, that's like another whole instrument, you know. Yeah. So I've used the whammy bar as an extensive tool in my play box, you know, but I did away with it for this. And another thing that I've just never really done a lot of is play with my fingers.
Right.
You know, I'm not very good at all, you know, but I wanted to work on it. So I had all these limitations that I set up for myself. So I really had to work really hard to get a good sounding song out of it, you know. And then the concept that I had in the back of my mind for this joint shifting, I called it joint shifting. It gave me an opportunity to play with that. And what it is, you can see it in the video. If you look at the Candle Power video, there's just weird things where you bend notes one way and then you open strings and then you're moving like this while notes are bending and notes are releasing, you know. It's really difficult, but it sounds unlike anything that I've heard, you know, and that's the goal, you know. So that's what Candle Power is about.
Yeah, I love that idea, that concept of limitations kind of fostering creativity that maybe you wouldn't otherwise experience.
Yeah, and I would do that a lot. I mean, I would recommend for experimentation to guitar players to do something like play for an hour soloing, improvising on one string, you know, or maybe one string with one finger, or maybe two strings that are two strings apart. You know, these things will when you start doing it for about 10 seconds, you're like, okay, this sucks. I don't want to do this anymore. But if you stick with it, you'll just start, and you find an interest in it. You'll just start doing things that you never would do and they're cool. You incorporate them then into your vocabulary, your musical vocabulary, and they just pop out in the middle of your improvising, and it's really great.
Yeah, that's cool. The only thing I'll disagree with you about is that you're not good at finger picking, because there's some couple of lines in that Candle Power tune that just are beautifully kind of chicken picked, in the way that country players do it. Very convincing. I'm pretty sure you could probably chicken pick as good as anyone.
Wow, you listen to if you listen to Albert Lee and
Right. Oh, yeah.
Danny Gatton and all those guys, the only chicken picking I'm going to do is in the chicken yard. Those guys are monsters.
Yeah, it's true. So what else do you have coming up? I know you're working with Generation Axe. That's super group of great guitar players. Can you talk about kind of anything you're doing with them coming up?
Yeah. That was such a great project I put together. I had done G3 with Joe Satriani for many years, and that was just fantastic. Any opportunity I get to work with Joe is great. And I came up with this idea to do this five guitar show with these absolute maniac guitar players. And I made a list of my favorite metal guitar players, rock, heavy guitar players, because the concept was to kind of reinvent it every so often and do like a blues kind of a thing, and then maybe a jazz even, or something like that. I'm probably only appropriately involved with the rock one, because that's my style. But when I got these guys together, people thought it was going to be a disaster because they're such powerful personalities,
Right.
But I got to tell you, man, it was the best, because they're amazing people. You've got Yngwie Malmsteen, Zakk Wylde, Nuno Bettencourt, and Tosin Abasi. And these guys all are absolutely accomplished and unique. And we came together and we worked together, and the show was just it was just fabulous. And we have that little picture you just showed of the guitars.
I want to talk about that for sure.
Yeah, we have we did a tour of America. We recorded, and then we went to Asia, and we recorded it, and we released the first Generation Axe record. And on the last tour, we recorded all the shows. So, and we filmed a couple of shows, one of them in Austin, Texas. So right after I finished this little acoustic vocal record, I'm going to be mixing and editing the new Generation Axe album and video. Don't know how videos work these days, but and then we're just in a holding pattern like every other touring artist.
Yeah, and just to go back to the photo we showed for a second, that is a screenshot from a YouTube. Well, I shouldn't say YouTube, but it's on YouTube where I found it. It's an instrumental version of Bohemian Rhapsody that you all did. And what I love about this image is that you don't even have to see the guys' faces to know, who's on the screen. And there is a guest artist.
Yep.
You can probably tell by the guitar in the top center photo there. But I love that idea too, that you can kind of, even the personalities of the instrumental are all right there,
Well, that was amazing because Nuno, who is an absolute incredible producer, creative person, he was asked by, I think it was AXS, to put together. No, it was so sorry.
I think the program is called At Home and Social.
At Home and Social, that's right. They asked Nuno to put together a half an hour programming of it, and he knows everybody, and he got some great artists together. But he wanted to present Generation Axe doing Bohemian Rhapsody, because that was the song that really we worked so hard on. I found all of Freddie's vocals online, and I created an arrangement for all of us. Every one of his vocals are performed on guitar. Yeah. And so we did that, and Nuno's very good friends with Brian May, and I know Brian. So Brian is just, if you know him, God, that guy is one of the nicest people, sweetest guys. He was supporting artists back when the first week that I arrived in California, I was 20 years old, and I was working for Frank Zappa, and I went to the legendary Rainbow Bar and Grill on Sunset, and this is where all the rock stars hang out and everything. And I was like, "Ooh, rock stars! Where are we going to see a rock star?" You know, I walk in and Brian May is standing at the bar.
Huh.
And now it's just like 2 weeks before that, I had posters of him in my bedroom at home. You know what I mean? One of my favorite guitar players, and there he is. And I started talking to him, and he was so kind. He invited me to a Queen rehearsal. I went to a Queen rehearsal. It was so great. And I played that guitar, the Red Special, and it didn't sound like Brian, unfortunately. But he decided to join us for this Bohemian Rhapsody that we did on this At Home and Social. And I guess you can see it now on
I found it on YouTube. The sort of the virtual kind of version where you're all together there, but there's even a live version without Brian somewhere that I saw.
There's a lot of live versions that I've seen uploaded from people in the concerts, but I've got the definitive live version, and that'll be available when the record comes out.
I'm looking forward to that. Yeah,
oh, it's fantastic. You're not going to believe this. This the way it sounds, you know, with all the guitars. It's so great.
That's great. I can also attest to the fact that Brian May is a super nice guy. He was at our induction ceremony last year, and he inducted Def Leppard, and I talked with him for a few minutes, but he was lovely. And I wanted to ask you too. You have a guitar camp every year, or maybe about every year and a half, called Vi Academy, right? And there are lots of special guests that come to that. And you've got one in the works right now. Is that right?
We do, but
it's
who knows how it's gonna transpire. We've been desperate to hold the Queen Mary, and we've got it. We've got the Queen Mary for the next Vi Academy, and the Vi Academy is really great. First, I love talking and teaching guitar, and the people that come, we have anywhere between 150 200 students, and it's like 5 days, or I think maybe three to 5 days, and it's been fantastic because I love meeting these people, seeing their passion, you know, feeling their enthusiasm. It's usually done in these beautiful resorts, and I jam with every player. You know, it takes hours and hours and hours and hours, but I love doing it. And we have incredible guests that come and teach. And I mean, we've had so many, I don't even know where to start, but I think that we're shooting for July of 21. But you know, we never know.
Yeah. I guess we'll see how it goes, but that's a great thing that you do. It's really cool that I think that you jam with all the guests, and you know, kind of treat everyone the same. You know, whether no matter their level of musicianship. Cool.
Yeah, and you know what's nice is when you're jamming with somebody else, when you're improvising with somebody else, it's a very intimate, sharing, vulnerable experience when you really open up. But that's how the good stuff happens. And when I have these students come up and I jam with them, they range in proficiency levels from, you know, much more technique than me to people that can barely squeak out notes. You know what I mean? Yeah. And they're all welcome because it's part of the communication. You know, immediately when somebody comes up and I can hear and I can feel and I can see their proficiency level, I do my best to bring it there so they're comfortable, you know, and very interesting things can come out of it and do.
I'm sure. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, for those who don't know kind of your whole story, I'd love to kind of circle back to the beginning and maybe just talk about some of the highlights of your career. First of all, you're born and raised in Carle Place, New York, right?
Mm-hmm.
Long Island. Any early memories kind of stand out from a musical perspective?
Oh, many. Yeah, sure. Well, for those who are interested, my musical evolution, Um, I received a little spinet organ on my 6th birthday from my mom, and as soon as I hit it, and I knew the notes went higher this way and lower that way, I had an epiphany. You know, that music, it just made sense to me. Not much else made any sense, but I just instinctually or intuitively understood. Oh, okay, that's the language of music, and I loved little black dots. And I just loved the idea of being able to control a huge group of people with little black dots, you know?
Yeah.
So, but then when I was 7, I saw this kid in my in my school. He was 9 and he was playing guitar. And, you know, when you're 7 and somebody's 9, they're like a god, you know, and especially if they're playing guitar. And I had another very profound moment because I remember you know, you have those moments of clarity where it's like you can remember the way the room smelled, or you know, I could remember what the kid was wearing. And as soon as I saw that guitar, I just said, that's it. That is the coolest. It was like I don't know, almost like a past life connection or something like that.
Yeah.
And but I didn't know what that meant, you know. Was I going to play the guitar, you know? So I never really picked it. I didn't pick it up because you know, in my town, if you played the guitar, you were either really cool or you thought you were cool. But I was really fortunate because I had friends that had great taste in music. Probably one of my greatest evolutions was my friend that lived a few doors down, John Sergio. His name was John Sergio, and he was just a real music lover. And he turned me. I mean, I discovered Led Zeppelin when I was 12, and that's when I decided to play. You know, I said, okay, that's it. I heard the solo from Heartbreaker, and I'm like, that's it. Yeah. You know, and I loved rock music, and everything was Zeppelin until I would go to John's house, and he'd say, no, that you have never heard Queen or Jethro Tull or ELP or Yes or. So he was really powerful influence on me, and took me to concerts, and was in the band for the first band that I was ever in, and just really was very supportive and a really, you know, childhood friend. And he played guitar. First he played guitar and then bass. And I was at his house once when I saw him play guitar, and I couldn't believe it because I was 12 and there was a kid lived 3 doors down that could play guitar. And I was stunned. And I said, you must be the greatest guitar player in town. And he said, if you think I'm great, you should see my guitar teacher, Joe Satriani.
Yeah.
So John gave me Joe's number.
Okay.
Joe lived in our town.
Yeah.
You know?
And he's only about 4 years older than you too. And Joe's only about 4 years older than you too, right?
Yeah. But again, when you're 12, somebody that's, you know, 15 or 16 is like a god, especially Joe, because he was always cool. Joe was always great. Huh. You know, he was solid, just solid, and just amazing, gifted, absolutely a gifted human being, you know. And I was so lucky, you know, he taught me how to play for like 3 or 4 years. My lessons with Joe were just my everything. But I still wanted to, I still had a real pull in composition. And one of the other greatest advantages I had in high school was a music teacher named Bill Westcott, who allowed me to take a 12th grade music theory class starting in 7th grade. So and it was intense. I mean, Bill was intense. He taught me everything. I learned how to compose. I wrote my first orchestra score in high school for the high school orchestra, and was learning everything about compositional music, classical music, theory. Everything, all the theory I learned really basically came from Bill. And then when I go to Joe, because Joe also was taking the classes with Bill,
okay,
Joe would teach me how to kind of take this musical information and apply it to the guitar, because I was using it to compose and wasn't interested in making the connection. And then Joe opened a lot of space for me to see the value in that. And then I went to Berklee College of Music, which was fantastic. I had a great time. And then while I was at Berklee, I was a big Frank Zappa fan ever since I was a teenager, and started to communicate with him. And I sent him some transcriptions and a playing of my band. And it was good enough for him where I moved out to California and joined his band when I was 20. and on and off worked for Frank. Well, not on and off, but pretty much worked solidly for Frank for about 5 years. And then I joined a band called Alcatraz after that. And then right from there, I went to Dave Roth.
Yeah.
And I think for a person like myself, the milestones in my career were probably being a Zappa musician, I've discovered just carries a lot of cachet, you know. When I had done the Crossroads, the film,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a nice little shot of me and Frank. I was 20 at the time. I can't even believe it. But I had this movie Crossroads then that came out. Before that was my first solo record that I made, Flexible, that had a song on it called the Attitude Song. That was huge because it had all these crazy guitar things in it. Yeah, there you go. I'm working on a new vinyl release for that right now, actually.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And but that was that song really had an impact on the guitar community, and from it I got the Crossroads gig with Ry Cooder, and that was huge. You know, when you're in a hit film, it's a game changer. You know, and then from that, I scored the most coveted guitar position in rock and roll. You know, I joined David Lee Roth's band when he left Van Halen.
Yeah.
And we had a great time. Yeah. And that's not the most flattering photo, but no worries. It's okay. We were rock stars. You could do all sorts of silly stuff.
It must have been fun being in that band.
Oh my God. It was so great. Traveling with Billy and Greg and Matt when he was in the band, and Dave. It was just, I can't believe how lucky I was to be able to have like 3-4 years of that kind of 80s rock star debauchery. It was so much fun.
What a time to be a rock star. It must have been.
Yeah, it really was. It really was. You could wear whatever you want. You do anything you wanted with your hair. You can act crazy. We had the stage was like the size of probably like a football field or something.
Right. Well, and when Eat 'Em and Smile came out, which is David Lee Roth's 1986, kind of solo debut, when he's coming out of, this is after Van Halen, that album was such a huge success. Videos were all over MTV, and really, like, you were suddenly part of one of the biggest, not only hard rock albums of the 80s, but one of the biggest bands of that time.
Yeah.
And I just assume it must have been life-changing in a quick way when you joined that band, or at least when that album came out, right?
Yeah, some of these things take you by surprise. They're really a surprise and delight. But I was groomed for it too, though, because being in Frank's band helped me to get some sea legs together on tour.
Yeah.
And then with Dave, I was a rock star in my mind anyway, because I was one of those kids that would destroy brooms in my bedroom in the mirror, and jumping all over the place in the mirror, listening to loud music. That was the 14-year-old. And, or even the starting at 6-year-old. But when I first joined Dave's band, of course, I was a huge Van Halen fan, like most people. Yeah. And we basically hibernated in his basement, writing music. And so I didn't really know how the music community on the outside world was changing. I mean, you gotta remember the music community in the world is just it's a big sector, but it's kind of small compared to, everything else. And then the rock community is even smaller. And then the instrumental guitar community, like the rock guitar virtuoso community, they kind of very small, Yeah. But when you're sort of in the top of it or at that area for a particular time, it's nice, and it was very, very valuable. But I remember being in the basement and then going in the studio and then finally going out on tour. And that's when it hit me what this all meant, because I remember the first show, it was 25,000 people in Huntsville, Alabama, and they were screaming so loud that it was scary. I was scared. Wow. Billy Sheehan and I would look, they were screaming so loud. They were louder than the loudest thing in the world, which was my guitar. Right. I just couldn't believe it. And then just, the funny thing that happens you can, it can change you, but it changes the way people react to you too. It changes the way people treat you. So that takes getting used to.
Right.
That takes kind of understanding that these people think that whether you are or not. For a lot of people, there's this belief that you're this special, great kind of virtuoso or something. And of course, there's a lot of people that hate your guts, but that can go to your head, and you can start believing the hype and stuff. And I remember I had just finished the record, the Eat 'em and Smile record, and it came out and it was just going crazy and all this MTV stuff at the time. And I was like, whoa, hold on, Vi, and I remember I was still having a normal life. Nobody even recognized me or anything. And I would go to my gym, and it kind of first hit me when I was leaving my gym one day after the album was released. And this guy is in the parking lot and he's driving, and he's kind of like, he's got music blasting, and I'm walking across the parking lot and he has to stop short for me because he came whipping around the corner, right? And he looks at me and he gives me this dirty look and he just screams, asshole, and I'm like, whoa. And then he's like, asshole, and he's bouncing, banging to the music. He's listening to Eat 'em and Smile.
Oh.
And I just looked at him. I was laughing, and that was probably one of the first steps in recognizing the grandeur of that world,
Wow. Well, and Dave had come from Van Halen, which was such an impressive band, of course. Yeah. And it seemed at the time to me, I guess, or even in retrospect, that he was deliberately kind of trying to go out and find the most amazing musicians he could find to create a band that could rival Van Halen. Billy Sheehan, Greg Bissonette, and you guys are totally incredible. Did you have that sense at the time that there was this, I don't know, that you were kind of built to rival Van Halen, or was there a pressure to somehow rise to that level?
Well, knowing how the human ego works a little bit, I knew that it was probably very important for Dave to put together the best band he could. Now, whether he wanted to rival Van Halen, that you'd have to talk to him, Yeah. But for me, I just really felt appreciative that I was in this position because it was just a lot of fun, And I never saw it as any kind of of course, in the back of your mind, there's all sorts of stuff. And if I told you that I didn't think about what, being compared to Edward Van Halen, was going to be on the table or not, I'd be lying. But frankly, it only occupied a very small place in my mind because I knew two things. One, you don't compete with Edward Van Halen.
Right.
It's stupid, because what are you going to do? How do you do that? You can't. Right. You're going to be better at being Edward than Edward. Right. It doesn't work that way, And I knew that, and I had so much respect for him. And the second thing I knew was that I was going to be me, and I was going to do what I wanted to do, and what I felt was my contribution the best I could, and I wasn't going to compromise because fans smell that stuff. They see right through it. If Eat 'em and Smile came out and it sounded like I was trying to be like Edward or compete or anything like that, they smell that stuff in a second, and it just doesn't work. And I like the way I play.
Yeah, right.
It's quirky, it's weird, and that's one of the things. And it worked great with Dave Roth because he's quirky and weird.
Right. Yeah, it's a great compliment.
It was a great combo. It was a great band, and I don't think it diminished Van Halen or anything. I mean, how could it?
No, I bought Eat 'em and Smile and 5150.
Yeah, they're both great records. The end.
Yeah. It's obviously we should recognize briefly. It's so sad that we lost Eddie Van Halen last month, and I know you've talked about his impact on the guitar world. Could you just talk about?
Well, yeah. I mean, Edward's contribution is unquantifiable.
Yeah.
Just from my own life experience, he was a shining light. Edward. He was kind of bohemian. He was simple in a sense, but he was a genius, and the genius was reflected in his inner ear, because the way his sound and his tone and the way and the melodies that he heard, that all came from in here.
Yeah.
People have tried to duplicate that sound, but you can't.
Right.
You come up with other things that maybe even be an evolution of what Edward was doing, but his sound came from his intention. And I mean, I know this because I was up at his house once, and he pointed out an amplifier, and he said, "You see that amp? I've recorded every single Van Halen song on that amplifier except two." And one time he was at my house in my studio, and I was playing my guitar, set up through all my gear, my amps. And, we were just, we had there was a period of time where we were friends and we got to hang out. And he picks up my guitar and he's going, "Oh, I got this idea." And he started playing, and it was Edward. I mean, there was no doubt. It wasn't the amp. It wasn't the guitar. Right. It sounded just like him, the brown tone and everything, Right. And but one of the things also, I mean, I can go on endlessly about how great of a rock guitar player he was. His timing, his rhythm, his swing, one of the great things about playing with Dave Roth was being able to get on stage and play some of those really great Van Halen songs. The guitar parts in those songs are like orchestra pieces, they're so well composed and they're just so great, and I enjoyed playing them so much. But I think we all gained tremendously from the contribution of Edward.
Yeah.
And we're all very grateful.
Agreed. I want to circle back and talk a little bit about your time with Frank Zappa, just to make sure we recognize him. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee Frank Zappa, in my opinion, one of the most underappreciated guitar players ever, but he was obviously much more than that. Can you talk about kind of things you learned from Frank that that you still are using today?
Well, it's a day doesn't go by that I don't think about him. And also, I was so young at the time, so I was very impressionable. And I would watch the way Frank would do things, and I just thought, well, that's how you do it, And that's how I learned how to produce in the studio. He showed me a lot of stuff. He lent me gear. But the great thing about Frank was he was a free thinker. He was an explosion of freedom. I think his sarcasm came from the fact that he would get frustrated when he saw people not knowing their own power, giving their power away to stupidity, But Frank was amazing in that he didn't see the parameters that are conventionally set up in almost anything he did. When he was composing music, he basically expanded the vocabulary of notational writing, rhythmic notational writing in composition. You don't hear about any of this stuff.
Right.
But trust me, and music scholars will agree. The other thing about Frank, and it was just because he would almost purposely look at things that needed to be dissolved and moved past. And he did that with gear. He did it with equipment. He would get a piece of equipment and then he'd look at it and tweak it and then he'd send it back to the manufacturers and say, "That's cool, but it doesn't do this, this, and this. So you got to make it do this, this, and this." So Frank would always do that. And probably one of the reasons I came up with the gem was because of this inspiration from Frank to do whatever you want. Don't take your ideas for granted. They're valuable. What I learned from Frank, and here's the kicker. You can do it. He didn't allow excuses like most people do, So, and he was constantly on. He was constantly creative and funny. I mean, Frank, we would just sit around and wait to hear what came out of his mouth. And and very intuitive, incredibly insightful. He almost had like I would say, and Gail too, almost like a clairvoyance of sorts. Frank had the ability to look at you as a musician and see potential uniqueness that you don't even know. And that's one of the things he pulled out of me. I mean, I have done things with him that were really not done in his band before, you know. Right. And it was just my ability to focus on learning incredibly difficult melodies and stuff. But Frank, you know, he marched to the beat of his own drummer, man. And when he'd take a guitar, and most people, when we buy guitars, you know, it's like, okay, this is the guitar, you know, don't touch the guitar, you know. Oh man, Frank took a hammer and a chisel to it, man. He would put in all sorts of electronics. He would change out frets and necks and put all these things, electronics in the guitar that even today I don't see. So when I started to venture into my own career, I took my cues from Frank, you know, do what you want. That was it. And know that you can just do it. So one of the things that I was questing after for so many years, ever since I was a kid, was the right guitar.
Right. Because
I loved Stratocasters because they had a whammy bar and Jimi Hendrix played one, you know, but I didn't like the way they sounded. They didn't sound metally enough to me. They didn't sound rock and roll enough, you know. Now I know a lot of people are saying, "Oh, you haven't heard so and so." Nah, they weren't doing it for me. That's it. And Les Paul's, sorry,
didn't connect with you and didn't inspire you, right?
Well, the sound didn't. The guitar did, you know. Yeah. But they'd had limitations that I wanted to break out of. The amount of frets, just all these things. So now Les Paul's, I loved Les Paul's because Jimmy Page played one, you know. And I liked the sound of the humbucker pickups, but I didn't like the way it sat, and it didn't have a whammy bar. So I remember after I'd left Frank's band, I started to experiment with having guitars made specifically around my idiosyncratic playing, you know. So I needed, then eventually, by the time I joined Dave's band, that was the big time, and I really needed to have an arsenal of instruments and gear for arena tours.
Yeah,
you know. So I knew I wanted to design a guitar that was more appropriate for the things I wanted. So that guitar in back of you, Bones, that's part of the exhibit, which I'm very appreciative that you guys invited me to be a part of, and that you picked my guitar. The funny thing is, I was telling you, like when they came to get it, it's like these 5 guys came in hazmat suits, you know, and they like were handling it like it was made of $1 billion, you know. And I'm like, if you guys could see what I do to that guitar, what I did to it. That was one of 4 that I had built for the David Lee Roth tour, and that really is the first prototype. It was the predecessor to the Gem, and I can point out, I'll do my best to point out some of the unique features that I had customized into this guitar that were unique for the time. Now, when I say unique for the time, I'm saying in the realm of signature series or actually production guitars that were being produced for the marketplace. For instance, if you look at this guitar, the neck has 24 frets, right? That was rare for a Strat style guitar at the time. You know, they only went to, I think, 22. Same thing with Les Paul's. And one of the other things, if you could see the cutaway, you see how deep that cutaway is?
Yeah.
That was something I did because I could never understand why Strats and Les Pauls or many guitars had these high frets that you just couldn't reach because the body was in the way. You know, the cutaway was never deep enough to play up top comfortably, and I could never understand why they did that. So with that cutaway in the horn is perfectly cut away to the dimensions of my wrist, my hand.
Right.
So that was kind of a unique feature. The humbucker pickups, the only guitar that I know of at the time, there was Jackson. Jackson started putting humbuckers, but before that, I believe Edward was the first one that hit the scene with a humbucker, but he had one. And one of the things that I really liked about a Strat was when you have single coil pickups, which is what I have in the middle position there,
mm-hmm.
they have a tubey kind of a sound when you use two pickups in conjunction, like the neck position pickup and the middle position. And it has a really nice tubey kind of a tone, but you can't get that with a humbucker, which I have here in the neck position. So I have one of the unique features of this guitar, I'm told was unique at the time and is now incorporated into many production guitars contemporarily, is the pickup switch. It's a 5-position switch. You can see it on the right there. But when you're in like the first position, you've got the full-on humbucker in the neck position, and you click it into the next position, and it splits the coil on the humbucker. So you get 2 single coil pickups because it turns on the middle pickup,
right,
and then it splits the coil, and you get that really nice, clean, tubey kind of a Strat sound. Sure. And then and the same thing applies when you go into the middle position. Now you got a full-on single coil. And then when you click into the 4th position, you have a split humbucker in the bridge position there, mm-hmm. and a single coil in the middle. So you get that tubey sound again. And then you click it all the way down, and that trem position humbucker turns into just like a killer, distorted, beautiful, screaming pickup.
Sure.
So that was actually a unique feature. Now, one of the other things that you can't really see, because for some reason you guys don't have the whammy bar on this guitar.
Right. It's not in the exhibit, no.
Yeah.
But
here, you know what? Click back to me.
Yeah. Well,
and I'll show you what I have here. This is Evo, which is the gem that I kind of adopted back many years ago, that I've been playing as my main guitar. I wish I can give you specifics on dates, but I almost have no concept of the past. Okay. Sure. But one of the things that I always wanted to do that no guitar that I ever played did was to pull up.
Yeah.
You hear that? You hear how high that note is going?
Yeah.
You couldn't do that on like a Strat. I mean, at most you can, that would be maybe if you set it up, you can get like on a conventional whammy bar. So I would just, I was looking at it and I was saying, what is stopping the tailpiece from going very sharp? And I just noticed it was just the wood in the body.
Yeah.
I took a hammer and a chisel and I banged it out on one of the guitars. And next thing you know, I could do this. And that became, from what I'm told, the first floating trem system. And now most guitars you buy with trems you can see that they cut out the back here. They don't do it like this because it'd be too close to what I did. So that was and then a couple of little things like I could never understand why like Strats had their input jack here.
Yeah. Going
like this. So when you step on the cable by accident, it comes out, and Les Pauls have them like this.
Yep.
So I just did this like this way. So you have to stick it just makes so much sense, simple little things like that.
Yep.
And I knew that the guitar had some unique features. I didn't think about it though. I just thought, well, yeah, this is great. This is what I like. It's perfect. Right. And we had like 4 of them made, and I used them on tour. And then, when you start to be seen by a lot of people, companies are eager to have you play their instruments.
Sure, right.
So I was approached by all of the major guitar companies at the time to endorse them. And I always kind of felt that endorsements were weird, like, because I'm playing this, you should play this, it just felt weird to me. So I had this guitar and I sent it out to the companies and I said, whoever makes me this guitar, I'll work with. And everybody inevitably was sending me back their guitar with my name on it, you know, and just
Right.
except Ibanez. I mean, this company, they went to the wall, man. They made me exactly around the specifications of that guitar.
Right.
And I was so thrilled because now there was a company that could make a really, you know, and one of the quirky things, because consider the source, that I thought, okay, if a lot of people are going to start picking up on some of the elements of this guitar, I got to come up with something that nobody would copy.
Right.
The monkey grip. You know, and originally I put it in there so I could, with Dave Roth, so I can do these videos and swing the guitar around. But it's really a great kind of handle. But I'll show you, after 30 or 30 so years with the Gem, we've come up with a little evolution of that, which is the Pia.
Yeah.
And this just has a different cutaway, and it's pretty much the same, but it's got some well, the cutaway is different. I mean, the hole there.
They look like F holes almost. But
yeah, it almost looks like F holes. Yeah. But it was so when Ibanez approached me to endorse them, they said, you know, obviously we'll make you this guitar, but we want to make it for other people too. And I thought, who's going to want something like this? It's so quirky to me, you know? And they said, well, Mr. Steve, we think that maybe you'd be surprised. And sure enough, man, I couldn't believe it. I got to tell you, that guitar, when they made the Gem, I just can't, I mean, it was one of the greatest, well, first of all, one of the greatest investments, you know, I mean, I didn't have to do anything except give them the guitar and say, make this. And and then what happened was, because it's a very high-end guitar, it's very expensive, they made a lower-end model for more affordable, and that became the RG. And the RG went on to sell, and even to today, at times it's the #2 selling guitar in the world. Stratocasters are #1.
Right.
And then it's like the Les Paul and the RG, and in various countries it fluctuates. So that's like so nice, you know. And from what I'm told, it's the most successful signature series guitar in history. And people say, oh no, the Les Paul is.
Right.
And then I'm told that the Les Paul is actually not a signature series guitar.
I agree with you. And he certainly had a role in the development of the solid body guitar, but he did not design that model that his name is on.
Yeah, I don't know how they ended up, probably worked a deal or something, but yeah, and it's not the longest running signature series guitar. I believe, as far as my research goes, that record goes to George Benson. Sorry about that. Sorry, George. Who actually signed a deal with Ibanez, I think either several months or a year before I did. And his guitar is still available. So that's like the longest running signature series guitar. But that guitar and the bones that you have in back of you is really, I will say, and I'm very uncomfortable saying, you know, patting myself on the back because I don't believe it's necessary. I don't feel like anything that I contributed to that guitar was brilliant, although it was necessary for me. But I will say that there are elements to that guitar that I'll go on record and say they're historical, because so many guitars after that incorporated so much of what that any guitar you ever see that looks like that, I would go as far as to say might have been inspired. At the time, back when this came out, the only other guitar that was even remotely close was a Jackson. And I had a bunch of those. Grover Jackson gave me some of those fantastic guitars, but I didn't really like the neck through the body. Right. The scale length was too short. It didn't have certain things that I wanted, but it was probably the closest thing that I see.
And then I think around 1990 or so, you brought one more really important innovation to the electric guitar, and that was the 7th string, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk about how that came along? And
Yeah, that was a very another one of those very innocent, simple discussions where I was talking to my guys at Ibanez, and somebody said, it was Rich Lasner. He said, I had an 8-string guitar once. And I said, 8-string? That's crazy. 7-string, I could, and then I said, 7-string. And it just opened up. I forgot that I was in a position where I could request one, because you build a 7-string guitar with a tremolo. That's a lot of work, And I just said to them, you know what? Make me a gem with 7 strings. And that was really the extent of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, prototypes, getting it back, tweaking it. And because I knew that low string was going to be so valuable for many different types of players. I know for me, I wanted to have that low, and you can tune it to whatever you want, but B is usually the conventional. So you got a low B below E, and it moves air.
Yeah.
You could feel it in your solar plexus if you got the right setup. And this was fantastic. I used it on Passion and Warfare, the whole Whitesnake record. And it was sort of, it sort of went like this, it almost more like a novelty. But as I was playing it, there were young kids that were following what I was doing that I knew were going to be inspired to do things with a 7-string that were way different than what I was doing. And I knew that for even jazz players, it would be advantageous because you got that extra low string to walk bass lines. And I actually went into a club once and saw a guy with an Ibanez 7-string, the Universe, doing jazz and doing all those things that I thought, one day I'm going to see a great jazz player do this. And sure enough, there he is, and he's doing it. And then, so the popularity of the guitar went like this. But then right when Ibanez called and said, it may have run its course. We're thinking about discontinuing it. And I said, you know what? Just keep it going, even if you're only selling a handful a year, because it just hasn't, the people that were hearing me and being inspired by that guitar haven't come on the scene yet.
Right.
And sure enough, I'm driving down the street and I hear this music on the radio, and I could not believe it. It was so heavy and so interesting. And I pulled the car over and I listened. I was saying to myself, that's a 7-string. Whoever these guys are, they're playing a 7-string guitar,
Right.
And it was Korn.
Right. Yeah.
And that was the beginning of it all. I mean, that's when all so many bands were playing. They started to use the 7-string, the ones in the sort of the subculture. And it was an amazing kind of a movement, and even evolved into 8 strings and even 9-string guitars.
Right.
But it was really nice to see how that 7-string that started out as a simple request from me actually helped in aiding a whole subculture of music to be born. It's weird. And even the and it's funny because most people don't know, but it's fine. I mean, I do interviews. I've done interviews where people have asked me, journalists have asked me, with everybody playing a 7-string now, do you think you'll ever play it? I'd be like, nah, been done before, But those kinds of things are like little blessings in the career of an artist.
Sure. I did want to ask you about the whammy bar in particular, and that innovation that you brought, especially pulling up. One of the fascinating things I find about your playing is the absolute control you have for in terms of going from one pitch to another, whether it's up or down, no matter what string you're playing, quickly, and you can stop it right on a dime, right on that pitch. And I've always wondered, are you listening really quickly, or is that all muscle memory, or is it a combination of the two?
Yeah, I don't believe muscle memory will work because the tension on the strings based on the action, the neck, the bringing the guitar from backstage to the stage, and just having the springs a little tighter on one guitar from another. You can't really rely on muscle memory. You have to use your ear, and it's hard. It's hard for me. I don't think it's hard for Jeff Beck, but it's hard for Steve Vai.
Interesting. It's you make it look easy somehow, but yeah, I've always found that totally incredible to watch and listen to. Um, well, so after I guess after the '80s, and we kind of alluded to some of this. You were
Well, I want to just, I'd also, I don't think we touched on Whitesnake.
exactly.
Yeah, that was a real wonderful experience too. I had just left Dave's band, Dave Roth, and they can't. My plan was to finish Passion and Warfare and release that, and I really didn't know what I was going to do after that, except make more records, because I didn't think that I would have a successful solo career, but I still knew that I wanted to make my solo music. So I released Passion and Warfare, and the call came in for Whitesnake, and I love their music, and I really love great rock singers. And David Coverdale, man, I mean, that guy. He is so great of a singer, and the guys in the band were fantastic. And I just thought, well, this will be a great thing, fun thing to do. And the music was already written and recorded, with the exception of the guitars. So it was really easy for me. I came in, I did the guitars, and Adrian Vandenberg and myself worked them out in rehearsals, and we had a great run.
Yeah, and you went on a big, over a year-long tour with.
Yeah, it was like 13 months.
It must have been fun.
Yeah, it was great. I love touring. So.
Well, and so from that point on, if I'm not mistaken, I mean, you've been in bands during certain points, but that was basically the beginning of your solo career, and where you were essentially no longer a sideman with another frontman, right?
Right.
Was that sort of a definitive decision that you made then, that you no longer wanted to be a sideman, or does it just look that way as you kind of look back at that time?
Well, when I look back, I realized that I had an inner musical voice that was unique to me, just like everybody. Everybody that makes music is doing it. If they listen to their inner ear, unique stuff is going to come out. But I also had the rock and roll bug. I loved rock music, and I loved the rock touring thing. So after Frank, I made my first solo record, and it was very quirky, Flexible. It's called Flexible. You saw it. And I really loved doing that. It felt there was so much freedom in it. And I thought, this is what I want to do. But when the call came from Dave, it was just like, I'm not going to miss this gig.
Right.
This is the gig. And I loved it because it kind of, it tickled my rock and roll fantasies, Sure. And then when Whitesnake came along, I knew that I liked the music. I knew I liked the people. I knew that I was going to tour the world and make a lot of money. But I also knew that it wasn't going to be my gig past. Well, I didn't know about past the first record and tour, but I just knew there was too much of a pull in me to do the music that is my music, So after the Whitesnake tour, and I knew it before the tour, basically, that and David Coverdale is Whitesnake, and he had continued and will continue through his entire career to mix that band up. And he's had incredible players, so it wasn't like a great loss for Whitesnake, I think, I mean, but it was a great gain for Steve, because I unfeathered, just threw myself into my solo career and knew that there was no turning back. There was no amount of money. There was no amount of anything, because I already did it all.
Right.
And now I really wanted to just do my thing. And the odd thing was that when I was doing my thing, for me, it was much more successful.
Right. One thing I'll say about your solo output, I mean, I remember getting Flexible on cassette. I got it in the mid to late '80s, so I was a few years too late. But coming to it as a fan of guitar shredding, and having started playing guitar myself, being inspired by your stuff in David Lee Roth, and seeing Crossroads and all that, coming to it from that angle, for me, Flexible was so unexpected and so eclectic and so weird, in a great way. I mean,
It
And
was
then
innocent.
it was just, and then a few years later, I kind of learned who Frank Zappa was, and I realized that for me, you were kind of a bridge for me between this world of hard rock and that world of,
Oh, no.
avant-garde progressive Zappa music. So I guess I'm wondering anecdotally, do you know whether other listeners have experienced that, where they're drawn into your music by the rock and the dazzling guitar, but they come out of it maybe with something broader perspective or broadened horizons, something like
It's
that?
based on the listener, like everybody has a different kind of perspective of the things they like and the things they don't like. And in my career, and it's been 41 years now of touring and making records, I've been the subject, like I say, in the small little narrow field of the music business that I exist in, I've been the subject of incredible amounts of criticism, and everything from one of the world's greatest musical geniuses to his parents should have been neutered so he was never born.
Right.
It's just, it was so when people look at me, they have different feelings, and a lot of people were drawn to me because of my connection with Frank.
Mm-hmm.
And they liked the Flexible record because it was very Frank influenced. That's what I knew at the time. That's what I loved. And it was done well, with the very little bit of experience that I had. And some people discovered me through Frank. Some people will discover Flexible and go, what is this crap? And some people will find the little secret gems in it and just find a satisfaction in it. And yes, there's been people that have told me that they discovered Frank through me.
Exactly. Right.
Which would make sense because I've been in bands that have sold millions and millions of records, and they're gonna, if somebody finds an interest in an artist, they're going to research their history and go back. So that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we want to move into the questions from the viewers.
Mm-hmm.
So I've these questions. I'm going to ask a few of them. First of all, lots of comments saying how much people love the virtual sessions early in the lockdown, especially. So everything you've been doing this year. So thank you for doing that.
Well, for those people that are asking, I'm so sorry that I haven't done more. I'm working on this record, and I kind of have a tendency to become myopic, but thank you. And I'm looking forward to do more.
Here is one from Greg on YouTube. What do you like best about playing? Oh, I'm sorry. What do you like best about playing? Is it the self-expression?
There's a zone that exists when you're connected with your creative impulse. I call it the ultra zone, and it's a space of it's a state of being present and allowing and feeling the music to just flow through you without thinking and without thought, where it's just an allowance. And when that happens, it's epic. I mean, that's the juice. That's it. And being on a stage or having a guitar, it could be just sitting and playing by myself or in front of people, finding that zone, being in that zone. And you can see when a musician or an athlete or anybody is in that zone. There's this flow that is almost it's organic. There's confidence beyond in it, and that's the payoff. And the big payoff is when you're doing that with other people.
Yeah,
that's what I like.
Excellent. This question is almost as bad as asking you a political question, but it's not a political question. Who would you like to see inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? And that question is from Craig on Facebook.
It's a little difficult for me to explain because my whole perspective and outlook has been changing through life. And it was not too long ago that a couple of years, maybe about 5 years ago, I just started feeling really uncomfortable judging contests guitar contests, voting on Grammys, voting on anything in the musical community it just doesn't feel right to me. I don't condemn it, I think it's fine that people, but it's just so subjective to say who should be inducted. And frankly, I don't know really who has been entirely, so I couldn't say, but anybody that I might mention, Bill Westcott, you should induct Bill Westcott.
First musical mentor. That's a good.
That's right.
Yeah, great. And Joe
He's
Satriani,
dead,
Satriani, and maybe who else?
That's right. Joe and I would give the.
Yeah.
So just in a nutshell, I don't really feel comfortable making proclamations on who should be considered better than somebody else. It just doesn't make sense.
Right. Sounds good. That's a good answer. Here's another one from Craig on Facebook. Is there a song that you wish you had written?
Oh, there's many. I hear so many beautiful songs that, that you feel that you wish you had written. Mm-hmm. But I'm very happy that I feel like when I hit my mark as a songwriter, that for me, at least in my world, I prefer that over anything I've heard. Sorry. I like my own music. So what was the question again?
It was, is there
what song would I have written? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Maybe The Black Page.
Oh, Frank Zappa.
Oh, Frank Zappa.
By the way, I have to mention that I had this book here.
Oh, you got that book.
This is from our library. This is the Frank Zappa guitar book. And I don't know if it's in print anymore. Probably not.
Yeah, it just came back. The state re-released it.
This is the old one. This is an original one. And there is a young Steve Vai, who's a transcriber of this great book, which is really fun. I mean, if you read music, I can read music. I can't play anything in here, but it's fun to follow along. Put on "Shut Up and Play Your Guitar" and
yeah, it's pretty dense. Pretty dense transcriptions. There's probably rhythmic situations in there that would kill you if you tried to play them.
Right. Yeah. I imagine there are only a few people in the world who can actually play those songs. But yeah. So Black Page was the song or the piece that you transcribed and originally kind of impressed me. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a game changer, that song.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool. Next question from Joe on Facebook is, when will your acoustic record be released?
I don't quite know. I'll mention it now. I have to go in to have shoulder surgery. Yeah, my shoulder's all torn up from sitting like this my whole life, So it's all kind of torn, and they got to go in and fix it, and then I'm going to be out of. I won't be able to play for quite a while, or however long. So I don't know when it's going to come out. I'm trying to get as much done as I can before I have to go, but it's starting to compromise my playing.
Oh, sorry to hear that. Well,
yeah. So, but thanks for asking. I will get it out. I promise.
Good. Well, one last one from Jake and Cameron on YouTube. What would be your best advice to aspiring musicians?
Well, I get asked this question a lot, and I try to answer it differently every time. You're the boss of who you are. You're the boss of you, and it will never work out for you if you do things that you don't enjoy doing. That's really it. Only do it's only the secret is it's only necessary to do things that you really love doing, like really love. And sometimes that's a scary proposition for people, because what they might really enjoy might not be conventional, or it might be then there's fear that comes in, fear of being accepted, fear of failing, or even the fear of being different, and this cuts at the root of your own unique creativity. If there's any message I can give any young musician, it's that you are worthy of your own unique creativity to express it in the world. That's what you're here for, whatever it is. And it's needed. It's vitally needed in the world. This is another thing that I don't believe people recognize, is the vital need for the contribution of everybody at their best, at their finest. You know, this contributes in ways that we just don't see, because we have a tendency to not see those things. But
Right.
the bottom line is, inside of you is a unique creativity. You came here to express that. It might be on the guitar, it might be on something else. Don't be afraid of it. Be proud of it. Be happy about it. And you will live I believe, a more of a fulfilled life, because the only thing that at the end of the day that will give you the feeling of not having a fulfilled life is if you don't express your uniquely and joyful creative expressions. This is vital.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, your place in music is pretty unique, completely unique, really. I mean, you're as a virtuoso guitarist, composer, mostly instrumental music, as you mentioned, music that's hard to categorize, but somehow, you're also a household name. You have a really devoted fan base all over the world, and I just can't think of anyone else who's quite taken that same path. And there just really aren't that many musicians you can say all of that about. So it sounds like that. It sounds like that's how you made it happen. You kind of.
Well, I'm going to take what you just said and record it and put it in my treasures folder and play it back every time I need the inspiration.
Oh man! All right.
But well, there are so many. Thank you so much. It's very encouraging. I think there are, not that I would compare myself with guys like Prince or even Michael Jackson or any of these or Frank or any of these career artists that don't have any option but to be brutally unique and continue to evolve their own craft. That's an inner kind of a pull that some people have. And I recognize that I have it, and I don't realize how valuable it is because it's so simple. It's like the things that I had mentioned to you that really worked for me in my career were the simplest. They were the simplest things. All of the stuff that I failed at was stuff that was hard. I know that sounds odd, but thank you.
Oh, thank you. Well, this was a true thrill for me, I got to say, Steve. And
me too.
On behalf of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, we're honored that you joined us tonight. It was so much fun. And thank you again for being part of Play It Loud and for lending us your friend here, Bones. Please, everyone, remember that Play It Loud, it closes at the end of this year. So please visit us if you can. And everyone, thank you for tuning in. Just another reminder, you'll be able to hear this interview on Sirius XM in the coming weeks. Please come.
If I can add, this exhibit, it really is spectacular. I mean, it's got, like I was saying, 750,000 people came through the. This is probably an event that has joined together more historic instruments than ever before. I mean, you've got like Ringo's drum set there, right?
It's absolutely true. Ringo's set was here earlier here at the museum, but it's not part of Play It Loud. But it is incredible. Everything from from Leo Fender's very first prototype of the first solid body guitar.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a music fan, you gotta get out and see this. It's extraordinary. And what are you going to do anything after this with this, or is this it?
This is it. I mean, unfortunately, it all goes back to everybody who lent us the guitars, and some of these instruments are part of our permanent collection, but most of them are going back home in January.
Well, if you want to hold on to Bones, you're very welcome to.
Well, that sounds good to me. I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of my guitars in museums, and I feel like they're safe there.
Definitely safe here. And by the way, I should mention to everyone, it doesn't usually just sit here in this room. It's, you know, it's either in a vault or it's usually in the exhibit, Play It Loud. So it's always kept very safe. And yeah, it's in good hands here. Please feel free to keep it here, Steve.
All right. Well, you guys are very good to me. Thank you.
Likewise. And yeah, please visit us if you can. And I'm talking to Steve and everyone else out there. So please, everyone, stay safe and healthy out there. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Good night,
Great
everybody.
work.